Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan from Fireside Yankees, joined by national MLB insider Jack of MLB Nerds. Jack, I really appreciate you coming on. We've been good friends for a while, so it's good to have you on the podcast. Actually, I think this is actually my first time having you on here. And you know, you've been pretty active, especially with the recent report that you had about the Dodgers being on the verge of trading for Tyler Glasnow and Manuel Margot. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and, you had a whole night where basically you didn't know, there was nothing until Rosenthal talked about it in the morning. And can you tell us a little bit about how the trade market's moving now that Glasnow's situation might be figured out?
Yeah, man, Ryan, I really appreciate you having me. And yeah, talking about that trade that I had reported on Tuesday night that the Dodgers were on the verge of acquiring Tyler Glasnow and Manuel Margot from the Rays. And, my understanding is that was almost done. And, there is still some things to be worked out, though, with the financials. Glasnow might be looking for an extension in the Dodgers. And the prospect capital seems like that's kind of, what's been talked about for quite a while. And regarding the rest of the pitching market, or trade market with the pitchers, one guy I want to highlight is Dylan Cease. Now, Dylan Cease is definitely available. The thing is, he's quite expensive. He's way more expensive than a Tyler Glasnow player, partially because team control, partially because durability and potential with his stuff. I know the Braves were really, hard in on Cease for a while, and then kind of the price got jacked up quite a bit, and I think they took a step back, primarily because they didn't want to pay it. Also, the Braves don't really have great prospects. The Braves were players for Tyler Glasnow. They made a couple offers, and there were certainly names exchanged there with the Rays. Unfortunately, for them, nothing really came to fruition. It looks like Glasnow's going to be heading to LA. But I would say regarding Cease, teams to watch, Baltimore's still a team to watch, I would say. If his price comes down to it, maybe the Braves again, they were really interested. Texas is looking for a pitcher. So I would say, those teams and the Dodgers, we'll talk about, Yoshinobu Yamamoto in a bit here, I'm sure. But the Dodgers, they're, after Glasnow, they're still looking for a starting pitcher. So you can't rule them out, especially with the amount of prospect capital they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that a lot of people, especially when I do live streams, are asking, the Dodgers are going to go in on Yamamoto. The answer is pretty clearly yes at this point. And, kind of staying on theme with pitching here, and honestly, just staying on theme with Yamamoto, everybody wants to know about Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the sweepstakes, where their favorite teams stand on that front. What can you tell us about some of the front runners and who has kind of boosted their stock during these meetings?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been saying this for quite a while, and I'm going to stand by it. I think this is kind of the consensus that this is a three-team race. This is the Yankees, this is the Mets, and this is the Dodgers. Now, I know your audience is primarily Yankees viewers, so I'll talk about them first. The Yankees love where they're positioned. They have loved where they're positioned for quite a while. Yamamoto loves the idea of pinstripes. My understanding is his preference is the Yankees or Dodgers relative to the Mets. Now, I'll talk about the Mets in a second because not all hope is lost there. But regarding the Yankees, Yamamoto loves the idea of playing on the big stage with the Yankees in New York with the tradition, of the Japanese players that played there in the past. So I would feel pretty good if I was a Yankees fan regarding Yamamoto, though, nothing is done, nothing is set in stone. And obviously, there are still other teams involved, like the Dodgers. The Dodgers, obviously they had a meeting with their super team with, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and their newly acquired Shohei Ohtani. So I think, the Dodgers are also a player. He also loves the idea of the West Coast with the Dodgers, also rich history there and, Playing alongside, Shohei Ohtani, the best player ever. Definitely the best player of Japanese history, obviously going to now, just to the grand scheme of things, he's the best player ever. But regarding the Dodgers, I think they are also a player. But, my understanding is the Mets, who are the other team in this sweepstakes, their primary concern is the Yankees. It's not to say the Dodgers aren't very much in. I just think the lore of the Yankees for Yamamoto would make them, give them a slight edge. And also, it's likely that the Yankees would pay a significantly larger amount than the Dodgers would in a contract. Now, regarding the Mets, I would say the Mets, with them, it's going to come down to money, right? Like, is the Mets, are the Mets Yamamoto's number one choice? The answer is probably no. But money talks, and Steve Cohen can offer the most amount of money, you'll ever see for a guy like Yamamoto. I think this goes into the 300s for sure. Not for sure, but I have a pretty good suspicion this goes into the 300s, and, the Mets will be amongst the finalists for bidders. But, do I think, it's kind of tough because you have your money and then you have the interest and then, kind of the value. It's going to come down really to the gap between the Yankees, Dodgers, and then the Mets, and does that money gap outweigh Yamamoto's interest to play for a historic franchise like the Yankees or Dodgers. So I think it's really a three, horse race at this point. If something else, another team comes in like the Giants, I'd be shocked personally. I know they met, but I would be shocked. So I would look for those three teams, and this is going to come down to the wire here probably next week or so.
Yeah, no, and then another factor of this too is even if it goes to 300 millions, you also have to pay the posting fee on top of that. So
Yeah.
this is an expensive. We're not this. You might end up seeing the most money ever paid for a starting pitcher, even if it's not just a contract. Like I know Cole might end up with the higher number, but in terms of overall money paid or committed to, it's probably going to. I mean, it's possible.
I'm not going to lie. I mean, I could see this going 10 for 325. To be honest, like. That's just the contract with the posting fee. I think you're looking at a guy with Yamamoto who, all these teams have this guy as pretty much a top 5 starter in MLB right now. He's 25. It's almost, you never see a 25-year-old who's a top 5, pitcher in the sport become a free agent. So, I think you're going to see a larger contract than you initially expected. I saw a lot of people saying he may get $200 million to begin with. We're way past that. I initially predicted about 9 for 250. I think we're past that too. Though it's kind of unclear the top end, but I think we're looking at above 250 for sure, just considering the nature of the bidding and how things have kind of panned out so far.
Yeah, and another thing too is no qualifying offer, right? Like you typically see pitchers like this have that, or players of this caliber guaranteed to have that, and I think that's like led to literally all of the top markets are involved, which is another thing we rarely see. This is the first time Cohen and the Yankees are going head to head for a free agent. The Dodgers are involved, right? Like usually when there's a situation, I mean the Dodgers usually aren't even in the market of giving out these 10-year deals, right? Like Ohtani, Betts, those are kind of exceptions, but like for Cole, the Yankees were able to just give the 9th year, or for Harper, the Dodgers were willing to go the length that the Phillies were in terms of years. So this is certainly going to be, I mean, I think a historic sweepstakes, but I guess my final question regarding the pitching market right now, who do you think would be the next starter off the board after Yamamoto, and which teams can we expect to be in that race for that starter?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I like to think it's going to be Jordan Montgomery, but I couldn't tell you for sure. I think Monty's market is pretty extensive to the point where a team doesn't get Yamamoto, they may pivot there. I know the Mets are really interested. I know the Red Sox are interested. That's kind of a fit there. But I'm kind of not clued in on how much money he's going to get, which is kind of the thing. My prediction, pure speculation here. He's going to get around $150 million for maybe 6-7 years, which way more, Monty doing really well for himself relative to what he probably would have gotten before. But I don't know exactly where the money stands, but I do know Mets are really interested and the Red Sox are interested, and you could probably, maybe see the Dodgers. And I know there's been some reports of the Yankees being interested now. I haven't heard that in particular, but those who reported it, I wouldn't necessarily doubt them. So, you can count them as potentially a team. So, look, I think Monty is a guy who really boosted his stock clearly in the playoffs. He's reworked a bit of his repertoire in terms of pitch usage over the last couple of years, and he's really made himself into an established two-starter, I would say, in this league. Now, would I personally want to take that bet of Jordan Montgomery being a two-starter for 5 years? Not really. But, there are teams out there who, frankly, I think would. And I think we'll kind of see that come, after Yamamoto, with the pitching market should probably start to move. And I know it's frustrating for every MLB fan, including myself. Obviously I'm a fan also. It's frustrating to see, oh, Soto goes off the board, the market will move. Oh, when Ohtani goes off the board, the market will move. Oh, well, all right, now it's Yamamoto, he goes, market will move. I understand how frustrating that is, but you have to understand the nature of these things. You're waiting for the guy to set the market to then, boost the value of everybody else. And I think Yamamoto, frankly, will boost the, guys' value for like a guy like Blake Snell. John Heyman reported yesterday that Blake Snell is looking for $240 million. Now, do I think he gets that? Absolutely not. I doubt that. Do I think he gets like close to 200? Probably. I mean, this is a guy that gives you 5 really good innings, and that's very valuable. But to be a starting pitcher in this league, I think we've kind of seen, from 2020 and the evolution of kind of the new pitching analytics and the way we look at pitching, we're looking for guys who can go way deeper into games. And obviously, everyone's looking for that. But I think there was a little bit of time there we weren't really caring too much about that. It was a lot of just stuff, especially with the sticky stuff. But a guy like Blake Snell, he is the epitome of stuff, quality of stuff over, quantity of innings. So I think a guy like Blake Snell, I know the Phillies were in on him even after Aaron Nola. He wants to pitch for the Mariners. I heard him say that somewhere. But, or he didn't say necessarily. I think Mike Tirico said it on a broadcast. But I kind of doubt the Mariners would spend that kind of money on a starting pitcher like Blake Snell. It'd have to be a significant discount. So I'm not really too clued on Blake Snell's market at the moment, but I expect him to go probably later than Montgomery unless something, something happens that I'm not clued on.
Yeah, and as you kind of alluded to with like having teams pivot, right? Like now, if you're, let's say, a team like the Mets or the Red Sox, like if you don't have Yamamoto, you're trying to find somebody, right? Like when you go into an offseason as a big market spender and you don't walk away with anybody, you walk away with a lot of unhappy fans. That kind of plays that plays at least somewhat of a role in decision making, from my understanding. And speaking of another big kind of looming contract situation, Juan Soto, right? Like Juan Soto, Yankees get Juan Soto. Everyone's happy, but the conversation's now immediately shifted to extension talks. I know that it's unlikely. I understand that, Scott Boras clients, they really don't extend. Even the examples of extensions are like, guys signing them well before pre-arbitration or just players not of Juan Soto's caliber. How interested do you think the Yankees are going to be, at least in making a strong attempt at a preseason extension? And how does their pursuit of Yamamoto affect their willingness to go long-term with a guy like Soto?
Yeah, good question. I mean, regarding that extension, my understanding is, they're expected to approach Soto with a potential extension, probably in person. Though at this point, it seems, again, unlikely he would accept anything unless, the Yankees really bring out the brakes trucks here. But, the Yankees will try. They'll give an effort, they'll give an attempt, but the expectation from everybody around baseball is that, he's going to go into free agency. Now, does that mean the Yankees still won't have an upper hand come free agency? Absolutely not. It's well documented that almost every player, the Yankees treat their players almost better than every other organization. They make it really, really good for players and their families, and they really love that. So, it's kind of likely that not likely necessarily, but there's definitely a chance that, Soto's year in pinstripes will definitely benefit the Yankees in those negotiations. Now, do I think a deal happens preseason? Probably not. And how do I think that impacts Yamamoto? I'm not sure it does. I think, the Yankees view Yoshinobu Yamamoto as like not a generational type pitcher, but if you can get the category below that, the Yankees love this guy. The Yankees have loved this guy for years. We kind of know that. They saved his number for him last year. Like, this is a guy that the Yankees are over the moon with, and I think the Yankees will be further deep in bidding than maybe some people think. And, Bob Nightingale yesterday reported pretty casually, but did report that the Yankees are favorites for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And frankly, while I wouldn't use that word necessarily in just regards to the other, out of respect for their teams, they're really confident. They love their chances and they love the pitcher. So do I think it impacts one or the other? You're looking at a generational type hitter with Juan Soto. You're looking at an almost generational type pitcher with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, at least in the Yankees' eyes. I'm not sure they would really intertwine. I haven't heard too much on that just because the Soto extension stuff is so much in its infant stages and it's pretty unlikely it happens. But my best guess in terms of speculation and just hearing a couple things is that it would not impact the other one of the other too much.
Yeah, and I imagine that, like, if the Yankees were to sign Yamamoto and then they were to even just approach Soto about an extension, it indicates they're willing to keep both long-term, right? Like, I think part of this is, too, like, yeah, they're probably not, like, 95, let's say, or 90% chance not having the extension. The fact that the Yankees at least show interest should, I think, alleviate some concerns, but we'll have to wait and see there. And, kind of shifting gears a little bit here towards more of the Ohtani sweepstakes. Now, I know that the Yankees weren't involved, right? Like, this isn't going to be a Yankee-based thing, I understand, but It did come to, like, a very insane end, right? Like, you have, on Friday, it's like, oh my god, is he going to be a Blue Jay? And then a day later, he's a Dodger, right? He announced it himself. What was your read on the Ohtani situation, and how real was the buzz with Toronto? Were they just a leverage tool? Like, how real was that?
I mean, look, I think Shohei Ohtani's second choice was the Toronto Blue Jays. Do I think that mattered too much at the end? Not really. I think, it was reported by a couple people, including Jeff Passan of ESPN, that, Ohtani knew where he wanted to play at the beginning of the season, and we kind of all knew this. Like, realistically speaking, I thought he'd be a Dodger the whole time. The Jays had me a little bit confused at the end just because of the Plains fiasco and everything else that kind of came with it. But at the end of the day, this was almost a one-team race. I think the Jays certainly, the Giants definitely offered the same terms as the Dodgers, as Farhan said, but that wasn't really under consideration too much. The Jays they were certainly a player. I'm not sure where their offer went, but I don't think it was quite $700 million, even with deferrals and whatnot. So, I think realistically this was always a one team race largely, but it's a little bit confusing at the end there. I'm still kind of unclear because let's be real, John Morosi's not going to lie and throw away his career, so he clearly heard something. I kind of wonder where that was from, whether at the Ohtani camp and otherwise, So I still am confused myself and still trying to put it together myself, but I'm kind of under the impression that it was kind of a one team race the whole time, and we're kind of talking ourselves in circles here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just, like, I think a big thing people don't understand is just when you go to play for the Dodgers, not only are you getting a chance to win every year, but you're gonna have your skill set optimized. Like, they have everything available for you to get
Absolutely.
better at baseball, right? Like, even a guy like Mookie Betts, you would argue he's gotten better with the Dodgers in some respects, right? Freddie Freeman has remained unbelievable, right? Like, there are plenty
He's
of
even
players.
gotten better. Yeah,
Right, yeah, like,
to be honest.
you would say these are top of line players that you would tell them, going to any organization, don't change a thing, just be yourself. You're that guy already, and they've improved with the Dodgers, and they get incredible buy-in as well. So, not hard to see why you would want to go to the Dodgers, especially if you're Shohei Ohtani. I mean, that's one hell of a lineup. But who do you think could end up being a guy that's on the trade block, or is somebody who ends up getting traded? Who would shock most people? Like a guy that people really aren't thinking of as a trade candidate that you think could emerge as one. Maybe not necessarily traded, right? I'm not putting you to the fire here, but somebody you think is gonna get some mentions that you wouldn't expect to.
I mean, this is a good question. I would look at a guy, maybe one of the Mariners pitchers, even if that's not maybe Logan Gilbert. This is a guy that isn't mentioned too much in trade talks, but I think if a deal made sense for both sides, that deal would happen. He's not untouchable, but he's pretty expensive. I know at least a few teams that have reached out. I can't really say on camera here, but I know of a few teams that have reached out, and there's certainly interest. Are the Mariners inclined to trade him? Not really, but the Mariners really do need hitting. They missed on pretty much all the big fish, hitting wise, and I know Cody Bellinger's still out there, but at the moment, they really need hitting, and I think it would really benefit them. The way my personal opinion is, it would really benefit them to trade one of their pitchers for maybe one of the Orioles' top, like Kobe Mayo. You trade, maybe Brian Wu, Logan Gilbert for Kobe Mayo, like that. That would make a lot of sense to me. Do I think that happens? I don't know. But would I be over the moon shocked if one of them got traded? No, would not be.
Yeah, another aspect of this too is, you kind of alluded to this with Snell and Montgomery. Logan Gilbert makes starts, right? Like there is a lack of guys who can just, hey, go make 30 starts for me this year and go through, or go make 180 innings pitched, right? Like I've heard a lot of people say 180 is the new 200 in terms of innings pitched. So yeah, there is definitely value there. And then for our last question, so far, I know this is still kind of early. There's still some big fish that are going to, find new homes. But for the most part, Ohtani's come off the market. Soto's come off the market. We kind of have an understanding of who's in and who's not in on Yamamoto. Who would you say is the biggest winner of the offseason so far? And who would you say is the biggest loser for the offseason? And for the loser, how would you go about turning around their winter?
That's a great question. I'll start with the winners. Yankees, Dodgers. I'm sorry. You get two generational players, true generation. These are guys you can't replace, so I have to say those two. I like the return for the Padres, but you're trading a generational type player, even if it's for a year. I kind of, my opinion would have been a little different the last couple of years. My opinion on 1 year rentals has shifted a little bit, especially with a guy like Juan Soto, so I would say those are the two biggest winners. Sorry for being boring, but that's kind of where we're at right now. And I would say the biggest loser is the Seattle Mariners. Now, these guys have gotten worse. They've not gotten better. They've gotten worse. They've shed a lot of money. But what are they going to do with this money? They're not really in on Yamamoto. They were not really in on Soto at all. They were not in on Ohtani. Maybe Cody Bellinger. But is Cody Bellinger really a franchise needle-moving move? No. I think the Mariners, I don't know what they're doing. I think most people around baseball are kind of confused what they're doing because, Jerry DiPoto says they're going to increase pay. Okay, who are they going to pay? The free agents, so Matt Chapman, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but he's probably not, again, a franchise-changing type player anymore. So, I just don't know what the Mariners are doing. I think they're confusing. I think most people around baseball don't know what they're doing. I think, I understand you have to slash payroll. I get that, even though it sucks for the game. I understand that logistical part. But, they haven't really supplemented anything. They traded Jared Kelenic, who's projected to be a starting player on their team, for a salary dump. It was pure salary dump. Then they trade Eugenio Suarez, another salary dump. I think it's kind of ridiculous, kind of like, Seattle could be a contender. They have really good pieces. They got really good young controllable pitching. Why not supplement that young controllable pitching, with some good hitting? And frankly, offensively, outside of J-Rod, Cal Riley is really good. Again, he's a guy you may see moved in the next couple of years. It's kind of bleak offensively. J.P. Crawford was really good last season. Is he going to be as good as he was last season? He's a good player. Do I think? Probably not. 125 WRC plus bat? Probably not. I think the Mariners are really stuck in a Brewers type situation, if you know what I'm trying to say. They have all the pitching in the world. They can't find hitters. Maybe not quite to the extent of the Brewers, because the Brewers really have no hitting. Like, they have nothing. But the Mariners at least have a couple pieces. Like, they just need more. And I don't understand what they're doing. So I would say the biggest loser are the Mariners. And to get them to be better, hitters. You gotta get hitters. Like, maybe, you move Gilbert for, to the Cardinals, maybe for a couple of their hitters. It's maybe at this point it's less so about that one star and more so we just need good hitters on this team. You know what I mean? And I think, Juan Soto was a perfect fit for them. They had all the prospect capital in the world. The Mariners, the Padres, my understanding, according to sources familiar with the situation with the Padres, they would have preferred to trade with the Mariners if they were interested, just because of the players they had. But, the second fiddle was the Yankees. And the Yankees, clearly they were able to pony up what they had to. So.
Yeah, no, and when I think reports came out about, like, hey, they're trading Kelnick, they're trading Suarez, it's like, in the back of my head, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, oh crap, are they gonna try to gear up for Soto? But then it's like, you look at their lineup and like, man, Juan Soto can't even fix that. I don't know if he can fix that on his own, right? And relative to the context of their roster, like you mentioned Cody Bellinger, let's say they hadn't traded Suarez and Kelnick. If you add Bellinger to that, okay, you feel pretty good about yourself, actually. You essentially ran it back, you subtracted Hernandez, you added Bellinger. Look, is it the most sound strategy in the world to say, let's just get rid of strikeouts and add contact? Not always, especially in the way the game's headed, but you could argue Bellinger is a better player than Hernandez pretty confidently. Like, you wouldn't have to, it's not like a stretch of the imagination. So, yeah, no, I would definitely agree with them as the biggest loser. I was going to think about saying the Orioles, but, like, it's not like they've gotten worse. They just haven't done anything. Yeah. But, I mean, who's really gone off the starter market? That's, like, big time that they could have gotten. They weren't going to get Aaron Nola. Like, is Luis Severino changing them?
Really, Erod's the only guy that I heard them linked to that got off the board. But even then, like, is he really changing their franchise? Probably not. Would have been nice, but yeah.
Hey, maybe they get Dylan Cease, and that's still out there. For the Mariners, who's out there? That's really the question.
That's the big thing with the Mariners.
Right. And, overall, like, I think that this offseason still got some interesting sagas left to play out. Like, I'm going to be very interested to see how the starting pitching market plays out without Yamamoto. I wonder what teams, like, say, hey, you know what, we'll make this guy available. As mentioned with the Mariners, like, maybe the Mariners say, hey, everyone's looking for pitching, and we've got pitching, and there are teams willing to give us some crazy offers. Maybe something does get done, but, on that front, Jack, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Jack, where can we find you? Where can we find you on social media? Obviously I know, but for the fans and for everyone listening, go ahead, man.
Yeah, of course, man. I really appreciate you having me on, and thank you to the audience if you've gotten to this point for listening. I really appreciate it. You can find my Twitter, for those of you who don't know me, at MLB Nerds. That's my primary Twitter, where I do rankings and I do, analysis of players. And you can find my reporting on Azoulay-Haron. That's at Azoulay-Haron, Azoulayharon, on Twitter. And that's where all my reporting is. So if you want to continue to see stuff like this, make sure to check that out. And also make sure you drop a like, all that stuff on the Fireside Yankees stuff. Subscribe to them, subscribe, leave the good ratings and all that. And, we'll do more stuff like this in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, man. And look, I'll drop everything links-wise in the description. Guys, he's doing great stuff with reporting. Having him Marino on back-to-back has been awesome. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.